But there's no other way to start today's show than with the AFC Championship game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs, who are moving on to their third Super Bowl in 5 years. Of course, Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback in all 5 of those years, and in all 5 of those years, they have at least gotten to the AFC Championship game, in which they've hosted every single year at iconic Arrowhead Stadium, which has never been done before in the history of the NFL. So Kansas City won 23-20. And, when we talk about great athletes, it doesn't matter what sport we're talking about. It doesn't even have to be a team sport. It could be individual sports, tennis, golf, swimming, whatever the case may be. When we talk about the greatest athletes ever, we're talking about Phelps, Serena, Federer, Tiger. We think about the great individual moments. And even in team sports, Michael Jordan, flu game. LeBron James coming back from down 3-1 against the 73-9 Golden State Warriors team to break my heart. We think about Tom Brady winning ring number 5, breaking the tie with Montana for the most Super Bowl rings among starting quarterbacks with a 28-3 comeback at age 39 years old. All of these different things we think about with the greatest athletes. That, my friends, what we saw last night out of that Kansas City quarterback who wears number 15 was one of the greatest performances in the history of the National Football League. Patrick Mahomes, on not just a bum foot, or ankle rather, which he injured last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Need I, mention that Tracy Wolfson reported just minutes before kickoff that is an injury that normally takes at least 3 to 6 weeks to recover from. Mahomes was playing on an AFC Championship game 8 days later against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Certainly the best fourth quarter defense in the NFL, and we all know that's when it all matters most. He did this without his number 1 receiver, Mecole Hardman. He did this with a receiver in a guy in Noah Gray. Okay, how about this? How about this guy, Noah Gray, who has more tackles than catches in the NFL. This is who he's throwing to. He has no run game whatsoever. Kansas City runs the ball 17 times to get a grand total of 42 yards. I'm sorry, they ran the ball 20 times for 42 yards. He is in position against a team that is better than him, or a team that's better than what he's got, against a quarterback that was previously 3-0 against him, and the whole narrative coming this game was, hey, don't look now. Is Joe Burrow better than Patrick Mahomes? A narrative that I laughed off last week, thought it was preposterous, thought a guy who already has a Super Bowl ring in 2 appearances, now going on 3, by the way, who has 1 MVP that's about to be 2. It's gonna be official next Thursday night at the NFL Honors. 2 MVPs, now 3 Super Bowl appearances with a Super Bowl ring, and arguably the greatest 5-year stretch to begin a career in the history of the league. Joe Burrow is still clearly the second best quarterback in the NFL. There's not a quarterback on planet Earth, not named Patrick Mahomes II, that I would not take over, that I would take over Joe Burrow. None. He's a remarkable talent. Dude is maybe the most accurate guy in the league. Moves well in the pocket, is calm, poised, cool, collected. But when the Bengals needed him most, and this has been rare in his brief career thus far in the NFL, and even when you go back to college at LSU, this has been rare of Joe Burrow, that when his best was needed, or when his best was required, he did not give his best. Joe Burrow yesterday, against a lesser defense, 270 yards, okay, not bad. A touchdown, but 2 costly interceptions. A QBR of 50, which QBR is 0 to 100, so right in the middle, like the definition of average, and a passer rating that was below average at 70. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, throwing to guys who used to play defense on a bum leg against a top 5 defense, completed nearly 70% of his passes, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, a QBR of 67, a passer rating of 105. with no running game, with no legitimate receiver outside of Travis Kelce to speak of, that, ladies and gentlemen, was greatness on display. I'm no Chiefs fan, although I'm wearing this red Under Armour shirt, so it might appear to be the case. I'm a free agent fan. I'll be picking my team in a month's time, but we'll see what happens with that. But I cannot help but appreciate what I just witnessed last night, what all of America just witnessed last night on national television at Arrowhead Stadium, not Burrowhead. And that sort of shifts me to my next point. I said on Friday's show when I predicted this game, and I went with the Kansas City Chiefs, I said part of it is not necessarily that Kansas City's better, because I still don't think they're better. They have three superstars at their position, obviously Mahomes, then you have Travis Kelce, and then you have Chris Jones, who I said on Friday had to have a big game, and he absolutely dominated last night. Had probably the defensive play of the game late in the fourth quarter, sacking Joe Burrow on that third down. He was outstanding. But I said there's a real Warriors-Grizzlies aspect to this. Now, for the record, Cincinnati has accomplished far more than Memphis has. And Kansas City hasn't accomplished as much as Golden State has. But there was a dynamic of team has a championship in its rearview mirror in the last few years. Kansas City did win 3 years ago against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. They have the best quarterback in the league, very well might be the best player in the league, although I think it's a battle between he and Aaron Donald. I still think Donald is a monster. But be that as it may, you got the championship pedigree, you've got the great coach, you've got your key guys, your core guys locked into your team, ready to go each and every Sunday. Facing a team in Cincinnati that, yes, while its resume can stack up against just about everybody, if we're talking about the last 2 years, I don't see the rings. I don't know. Is it just me, or is Joe Burrow flashing a ring that doesn't have LSU on it? I'm just asking a question. Just asking for a friend. And when you had all week long, it started in Buffalo when the Bengals beat the Bills last week. Crushed Buffalo. Looked amazing. It was the most impressive win of the weekend in the divisional round. But you've got a player for Cincinnati, I forgot it was Mike Hilton, somebody for the Bengals, saying, we're going to Burrowhead rather than Arrowhead. Ooh, well, that's bulletin board material. You've got Eli Apple doing his Eli Apple thing. He's the Patrick Beverly of the NFL, talking trash when God knows nobody in the NFL, everybody in the NFL is better backing up their trash talk than Eli Apple. Okay, dude is not a good corner. He gets burned every Sunday. You have Joe Burrow walking into the stadium with a t-shirt that says, apologize in advance. You have Joe Mixon, who, by the way, was like no factor yesterday. He had 8 carries for 19 yards and got benched, by the way. Joe Mixon, who's talking about we're the big dogs of the AFC. And Kansas City does not say a word. I said, oh, okay. You want us? You're going to get us. They had 5 sacks. They took the ball away twice. Mahomes, as I mentioned, was otherworldly. And Andy Reid out-coached Zach Taylor. And if I have to hear another Bengals fan talk about, it's the ref's fault. Was it? I mean, I thought if you were the big dogs of the AFC, you wouldn't need assistance from the Zebras. But, I mean, listen, what do I know? What do I know? Most of those calls were go either way. There was not one call where I was like, oh my God, that's obvious. Well, Bryson, what about when they were holding on the offensive line, when Hendrickson got held and the interior defensive lineman got held, when Patrick Mahomes broke off that one run at the end that got him into field goal range, obviously attack on the late hit out of bounds, which I feel bad for that kid, by the way. He was very emotional after the game. I feel terrible for him because he knows the mistake he made, and it just sucks for him. Well, what about the holding there? Name the times that they call holding in tight playoff games with 15 seconds left. I mean, it's as if Bengals fans forgot that Sky Moore returned a punt 24 yards with 30 seconds left. It's as if Bengals fans forgot that Joe Burrow had the ball in his hands twice in the fourth quarter with a chance to take the lead. What did Joe Burrow do? 6 plays ended in a pick. The next drive, which ended up being his final of the game, 7 plays, punt. Your superstar quarterback, and God knows he is a superstar, which Joe Burrow is, did not make the plays when his team needed them. Kansas City did. Mahomes did. The most talented quarterback we have ever seen in the history of the National Football League did on one freaking leg. Yeah, they can say whatever they want after this game. Who dey? They going home, as Chris Jones said after the game. I'm telling you, one day I'll do a show, maybe this offseason, when there's not a whole lot to talk about in sports, because we all know there's that dead period, like in between the Super Bowl and March Madness. I'll do a segment on my show, like my 5 biggest pet peeves in sports. I can already tell you ahead of time what one of them is going to be. Fans blaming refs after close playoff losses. It drives me nuts. I mean, Kansas City got bad calls. They won the game. Ref didn't cost you, Cincinnati. Your quarterback did. Your quarterback's the reason that you lost the game. And their quarterback is the reason you lost the game, because we are seeing the next all-time pantheon great quarterback. If Mahomes continues to do this, ladies and gentlemen, who's to say he won't be the greatest player ever? Will he need 7 like Tom Brady? I don't think he's going to get 7. I think he'll get 3, maybe 4. I don't think he's going to get 7 like Tom did. But a lot of folks say LeBron James is the greatest ever. And he only has 4 rings to Jordan's 6. And Jordan doesn't even have the most rings. That's Bill Russell. Bill Russell has almost double the rings that Michael Jordan has. There's nuance when it comes to these greatest of all time arguments. Am I saying Mahomes is in it now? No, I am not saying that. He's 5 years in. We got a long way to go. But what he's done in those first 5 years, if he keeps doing this, that's an otherworldly talent we saw on that field yesterday. As I said on this show verbatim, going into the playoffs, it's Mahomes' world. We are all just living in it. And I said last week, there are 2 quarterbacks in the world that can care regardless of what you put around them, that can carry your teams. They both played on the field in Arrowhead Stadium last night. Joe Burrow had a beat-up offensive line. Patrick Mahomes was throwing to accountants on the field. Every other quarterback, you have to put a darn near perfect roster around them to win. Simple as that. I'm about to get into Philly and San Francisco, because that's kind of the situation in Philly, with all due respect to Jalen Hurts, by the way, who's playing really well. But every quarter, I don't care who it is, whether it's Lawrence, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, doesn't matter who it is. Derek Carr, you have to put a perfect roster around them. Matt Stafford last year, perfect roster around him. Because no quarterbacks in the world, outside of those 2 that we saw last night at Arrowhead Stadium, can carry you, regardless of what's around them. And what Mahomes did last night, folks, was one of the greatest things I've ever seen an NFL quarterback do. That was inspiring. It was. I'm not even a Chiefs fan. That was insane.